Hi everyone, and welcome to Lanarkshire Family History Society's webinar for October. My name is Claire Wilson and I will be your host this evening. I'd be obliged if you would keep your cameras and sound off until the presentation is over. It does help with keeping the background noise to a minimum so that everyone can enjoy the presentation, and hopefully it will also stop any delays or screens freezing as well. Please pop a note into the chat box and tell us where you're watching from today. Just a quick announcement, Christine's not with us tonight. Now give me a second because I did have it open. Christine's not with us tonight, but we do have the next Kilted Culture Conference coming up this Saturday. Let me just see if I can share my screen. There we go. So it's all about creating your family story, which fits in really well with Scotland's Year of Stories, and it really was the incentive behind creating all these webinars over this year. So it starts at 2 p.m. UK time and 9 a.m. Eastern time. So there are 5 presentations during the afternoons. We have Angela Day, who's a photographer. She will be showcasing showing you how to showcase your family photos in the best light, which includes tips on scanning and making minor repairs, as well as ways to display your images. And then we have Sean Smalk from Titanic Honour and Glory. You will know Sean because he has done some presentations for us in the past. He does work a lot with engaging kids and going around schools and homes and veteran charities. So I couldn't think of anyone better to provide a presentation on how to engage children and older relatives. And then we have Claire Miller, who will give us a story creating workshop. Claire is an author and has been writing since 2001. She writes children's books. She has been providing little kind of snippets of ideas on how to put your story together in the Kilted Ancestors group. And during this workshop, she's going to show you how to, get your characters together, write your story, how to get it onto computer, and also to give you ways to think about how you might want to publish it as well. And then I'll be doing the next presentation, which is genealogy journaling. It's do you write down your own memoirs? Do you pass them down your family? I've been actually working on this quite a bit this week, and we have lots of prompts for you for ideas on how to pull family stories together and dig into the lives of your ancestors at the same time. And then Christine's going to be doing a presentation on how to pull it all together. She covers a lot actually in this, from how to put things into books, and I think she's got some other ways of, coasters, posters, you name it. She sticks everything onto books. She actually sent me coasters at Christmas with some of my logos on it, which was really, really nice. So yeah, she's quite high tech when it comes to ways to showcase your family history. And you can book all this on Christine's website. I'll put the link into the chat. It's £20 for the whole day, and which works out about 35 Canadian dollars. Okay. And I'd also like to thank Lanarkshire Family History Society for their kind contribution to each of these events. It really is appreciated. They offer door prizes for the events, along with a lot of other publishers and family history societies. So there is always the option that, in coming along, you might win a prize. So let's move on. Our speaker this evening is Wiebke McGhee. Wiebke is the archivist for North Lanarkshire Council based in Motherwell. She graduated with an MA in Medieval and Modern History from Trier University in Germany, and has postgraduate degrees in Library and Information Studies and Archives Administration. Previous employment includes Corpus Christi College Library, Oxford and the University of Glasgow Archives. So if you struggle to read old documents, tonight Wiebke's presentation will provide us with some hints and tips on how to read some of this old handwriting. There are some handouts which she's kindly supplied, and I will put them into the chat box near the end of the presentation. If you do have any questions for Wiebke, I would ask you just to put them into the chat box, which is at the bottom of the screen. Wiebke, how are you tonight?
Yeah, I'm okay. I was just saying earlier to Claire that I'm using our historic Apple Mac this evening. It's over 20 years old because other hardware failed, but yeah, fingers crossed it will all work.
Do you know, I still actually run, I mean, I'm obviously on Windows 10 with my computer, but I've got one that runs on, I think it's XP, and I've got a separate CD-ROM because a lot of the family history discs that they used to get years ago don't run on the new computers. So it's like I sometimes get the old, the old laptop out and the CD-ROM and try to pick it up that way. Got to do what you got to do.
Yeah, so if you find an old floppy disk, old
Thankfully, I've managed to get everything off of them. So I'll hand over to you anyway, Wiebke.
Okay, let's see how this works. Share the screen. Should be this. Okay, hold. No, I just want this. Okay. Okay, can you see?
I can. You just need to start it from the first
slide.
Okay,
and I'm just gonna. Sorry, I'm just trying to get to the bit where I can see. There we go. Slideshow. There we go. Okay.
Perfect.
Okay, can you see? Yeah, great.
Yeah.
Okay, now I just have to I just have to see how I navigate my slideshow here. Okay, I think I'm all set. Okay, well, thank you for inviting me to speak to you again. I know some of your members already heard me speaking today at a different in a different place as well, so I hope it's not going to be too much of listening to me. My name is Wiebke McGhee. I'm the archivist for North Lanarkshire Council, and I've been in this post for quite a long time, 18 years, I think. So I'm quite familiar with the collections of the area of North Lanarkshire. So tonight I would like to give you an introduction to reading old handwriting. So I would kind of say you probably shouldn't expect to be an expert in reading old handwriting after this, but what I would like to sort of get across is that it's something that is not beyond anybody. It's with a bit of with a few pointers to difficult letters and a bit about technique, how to approach a text you might not be able to read. Hopefully, at the end of today, of this evening, you feel confident to at least give it a go, and hopefully a success will come. Okay, let's see. Oh, okay, there we go. So as I said before, I'm going to give you a very brief introduction to our archive service, just for those who haven't heard of us before. It's really going to be very brief, and then we're going to do the introduction to reading old handwriting. And afterwards, you can ask me questions about anything, not just about old handwriting, but also about our archives as well. So now, so North Lanarkshire Archive Service has existed since 1996. That was after the last local government reorganisation, when the new 32 local authorities in Scotland were asked to make proper arrangements for looking after their records. So there's now, I think now all 32 local authorities actually have an archive service that can vary a bit in size, and sometimes our records are still held with the previous older regional archive services. But the first place to get in touch with would be your local archive service for the area you're researching, and then we can point you in the right direction if we don't have the records. So we hold all kinds of things in the archive, the records of the previous administrations of the area, the previous districts, counties, parishes, and so on, secular parishes, I should say, estate papers, records of clubs and societies, businesses in the area. I should add anything that's not nationalized industry, because obviously Lanarkshire is well known for the iron, steel industry and for coal mining, because they were all nationalized industries. Those records went to the National Records of Scotland, so we wouldn't hold them. And then we also have a lot of maps, photographs, postcards. Yeah, I think that's sort of a brief summary records of individuals who collected material of interest to the local area as well. So we're open Monday to Saturday from 12 to 4. We recommend you you don't have to make an appointment, but we recommend you make an appointment because then we can provide the best service to you. We can let you know whether we actually have what you're looking for, and we can have the records ready for you as well when you arrive. If you can't come to us, there's our email address, heritagecentre@northland.gov.uk. That will reach not just the archive service, but also our local studies service. So we pass your inquiry on to the most appropriate service there. Our phone number is here as well. And you can follow us on Twitter by NL Heritage. I think I've got a pointer. Let's see if that works. I'm not quite sure. This is all a bit different here on let me see. Let's try it. Choose red. Can you see something there? No, I think it's always, yeah, it's actually I can draw. Oh, well, let's draw today. I can't see a point, like a laser pointer or something here, but I'll just draw in my, hopefully that will work as well. So this is our Twitter account, and we tweet not just North Lanarkshire Archives, but also the museum service and local studies, and we tweet about anything to do with the heritage of North Lanarkshire, whether it's about objects, exhibitions, stories we researched about the history of North Lanarkshire. And this building here, I'm going to draw again. Whoop. That's the Heritage Centre in Motherwell, and it's just about a 5-minute walk from the railway station, and there's car parking behind as well, and that's where the archive is situated. Okay, just because obviously we're talking about family history, how do the records we hold in the archive can help with your family history? Our records can provide additional information to help you take your research further. There might be clues that you might not find in statutory records, in poor law records or cemetery records in particular. It can be emotionally moving, and it can help you get more of a picture of what the life of your family was like in the past. So even if you can't find a record of your family member, but let's say you found which school they went to, there might be photographs of a class at the same time that they attended the school, or you can read a bit about what happened in the school logbook, and that gives you an idea of what the experience of that person might have been like. But this shouldn't be here. Oh, there we go. Don't know. A stray slide appeared there. But today we will talk about handwriting, and many of our records and many of the records you will also encounter online, even if they have been indexed, and there's a summary description in sort of typewritten letters there on the screen for you in Ancestry. If you want to see the full content of a record, you will usually see the original handwriting. And even though we know that in the past the people who were tasked to keep the record had to have good handwriting, very often the handwriting style looks unfamiliar to us, and we need a bit of help deciphering what was written there. So I've got a few examples here. There's some household accounts, there's a letter. So if you want to explore these kind of records a bit more, knowing how to approach an unfamiliar looking text will give you more confidence in tackling. Oops, sorry, I'm just gonna, my mouse keeps going funny. There we go. Will give you more confidence in approaching these sort of records. So the more formal term for reading old handwriting is paleography. You will come across that as well when you're looking for help in books and online. And that comes from Greek palaios, old, and graphein, to write. So it's pretty much the same as reading old handwriting. As I said before, why is it useful to study a bit of paleography when you do your family history research or any kind of historical research? Is that the full information contained in many records will be written in an older hand style. And if you want to get the full meaning and the full text, then yeah, you need to have some tools to be able to read this. So if you're looking for, I don't know whether any one of you ever looked up wills on Scotland's people, they can be quite daunting because they're long documents, and I could do a complete entire talk just on wills, because there's a lot to the kind of set, the way the wills are laid out and so on. But if you can at least try and decipher the main information, then that will take you a long way. Also, studying a bit of theory of paleography will you make aware of distinct letter forms, and will teach you techniques of how to approach a transcription. So you will learn how to look out for certain letters, and that will help you identify what kind of handwriting style was used, and then you know what other unusual letters to look for. And sometimes there can also be a mixed letter style, so you realize, oh, maybe if this person also used this old letter, then maybe they used another old letter as well. So it will kind of open up a bit open you up to what you might encounter in a particular text. And the last thing I would always like to stress, it can be fun. I always think anybody who likes doing puzzles, who like to do a bit of detective work, trying to read old handwriting is for you, because it is a challenge, and it can be very satisfying once you've actually been able to transcribe the text and then read it. Making sense of the text and afterwards is another matter. One of the documents we'll look at later on is a legal text, and I mean, even if you give me a legal text that's typewritten, it can be challenging to get the full meaning. But obviously, you have to be able to read it first of all. Unless you're a lawyer, you might be more familiar with how legal texts are written as well, obviously. So we will be talking about 3 different handwriting styles today, and they are secretary hand, italic, and copperplate. And we will mainly focus on secretary hand, and then we will also look at approaches to reading unfamiliar writing, and I will give you some tips about dates and dating and language to look out for, and so on as well. So first of all, I'll give you just a general overview of the different handwriting styles, and then we'll come back to the secretary hand and I'll speak about that in a bit more detail and give you a few more tools, and you will have more tools in your handouts as well that Claire will email to you. So this is an example here of secretary hand. And secretary hand is a writing style that reached Britain from France in the 1370s. And by the 16th century, it was the most popular everyday and business style. And it was used for the bulk of routine administrative and government business, vernacular literature, and private correspondence. It was used for administrative and business purposes throughout Western Europe. So if you have family history on the continent, the handwriting of the same time will look exactly the same. And in Scotland, secretary hand persisted well into the late 1600s. And this example here is from that time, and sometimes even into the 18th century. It is not easy to read. You might be able to kind of make out some bits here and there, but it's generally not so easy for us to read because its characteristic letter shapes, especially in the lowercase, are unusual to the modern eye, and the writing often suffered from speed and carelessness. This one here is a very neat example, I should say. So it's an easier one to start with. So we'll come back to the example later on, and we'll give it a go reading it later on as well. So then the next letter style I would like to show you is italic. And this style was known in Britain from the late 15th century onwards, but only became more commonly used by the late 1500s when the gentry began to use it primarily for their signatures. So in some documents you might see secretary hand, and then but the signature or maybe the beginning was written in italic, or certain words that the writer wanted to highlight. As it became more popular, a mixed style with secretary hand began to develop, which led to the style becoming more cursive with the right hand slope, which you can see in the example here. It's got sort of a slight right hand slope. It started to dominate writing from the 17th century onwards. It is by large fairly easy to read for us, since the letter forms are very similar to modern letters. And this is here an example. All the examples I've got here today are from our Hamilton of Dale estate records. This collection contains a lot of small bits of paper that can be a complete mix in a bundle. That could be a poem, there could be a recipe, there could be a few accounts. There could be a doodle, which you will see in a moment. So it's great for illustrating a talk like this today. So this poem here is called Harley's Creed, and it's from the time of the Jacobite uprising. And this is a poem that can be read either across, let me see, oops, to get my pen again. So you can either read it across, or you can read it in two verses, just down, down, down. So if I start reading it the down way, I think you will have the position of the the Hanoverian succession. If you read it across, you get the meaning of the Jacobite cause. So if you read it down, you can see, I love with all my heart the Hanoverian part, and for the settlement my conscience gives consent. Most righteous is the cause to fight for George's laws. It is my mind and heart, though none should take my part. So I think this is something that's fairly easy to read. So we're not going to talk about it in more detail. And as I said before, when it becomes a bit more challenging is maybe when there was a bit of a mix with the secretary hand. So the last style I want to mention is a copperplate. So copperplate, or English roundhand, derives its name from the fact that the copybooks from which students learned it were printed from etched copper plates, and the style made it particularly suitable for engraving on copper plates. Copperplate script was prevalent in the 19th century, but was used as early as the 16th century in Europe. Unless you come across a very careless style, it is clear, pleasing, and legible. It's a clear, pleasing, and legible style with the familiar right-hand slope and loops on ascending and descending letters. So this is another example from the Hamilton of Dale collection. And it's a poem called On a Sleeping Little Gentleman. So yeah, sorry, I'll get my pen again. I know it doesn't. There we go. So on a sleeping little gentleman. So asleep, and while slumber weighs thy eyelids down, may no foul phantom over thy pillow frown. But brightest visions deck thy tranquil bed, and angels soaring over canopy thy head. So you can see this is, for people who learned joined up writing in school, this is very familiar style, and should not cause too many problems, because you can, the kind of techniques I give to you later on You can use them for any handwriting. Obviously, sometimes if you come across some terrible copperplate or terrible italics, they will be useful for any handwriting. But in general, it would be much less daunting approaching a text in copperplate or italics. So as I said, we will focus on secretary hand today, and why would that be? As I said before, we focus on it because it requires the most effort to learn, as the letter shapes are not familiar to us, and often in later writing, letters that were from secretary hand still exist in the more recent styles. So I've got, this is the doodle I mentioned before. So we've got this little phrase here: a man of words and not of deeds is like a garden full of weeds. And you can see that the writer has tried it in different handwriting styles, which to me is sort of an indication that people were aware and practiced the different handwriting styles at the same time. So this one here at the top is a slightly cursive secretary hand. So again, a man of words and not of deeds is like a garden full of weeds. And then the next one is italics with secretary hand elements. So we talk about this letter here later on in more detail. So the E, which is the other way around from how we write it today, is still here, even though other letters are in the italic style. And then the next one here is a more cursive italics, still with a few secretary hand elements. And then here at the bottom, we've got the copperplate style, which is the more familiar style to us now. So now we're going to have a look at secretary hand in a bit more detail. And there's a long list of letters that are unusual to the modern eye, which are the lowercase letters A, B, C, D, E, H, P, R, S, T, W, and X. And I'm just kind of just double check. Yes, we'll look at them in more detail in a moment. And also some letters can be used interchangeably. So I and J, J would be at the beginning and I at the middle, in the middle of the word. N and U, they can look really similar or identical. And U and V, again, V would be used at the beginning of the word and U in the middle of the word. And we're going to have a look at these letter shapes. And I sent you a handout about these letter shapes to Claire, who will circulate it. So the letter A, oh, I'm going to get my pen again. So you can see the letter A, it might look sort of more familiar to us now, but it can also look almost like a U with a stroke through it, or it can be quite open, so which could be a bit confusing. The letter B in general looks very familiar to our letter, joined up sort of letter writing B style today, but it can, depending on the size of it, can maybe initially you might think it's an E, so that can be confusing. The letter C, sometimes it looks more familiar to us in this style, but most often you find it like this, which initially would look like an R to you. The letter D, again, it can look like it's usually you can distinguish it by the size, but it can be more closed or it can be more open, like this here. Yeah, it just depends on the writer how large the letter was written. It could be mistaken for the E, which, as you can see here, is like the reverse of our letter E today. So that's one of the most, or sometimes it almost looks like an O. So this is a definite letter to look out for. And sometimes you might be unlucky and encounter this disjointed letter like this. The letter H can look more like familiar to us in this style, but it can look just like a wee hook, like this one here, or almost like another, like an S there as well. And in a TH, the T might just be this tiny thing here, the at the beginning, and then joined together in the TH. The P, again, there might be a more familiar shape as this one here, which is not too different from maybe in joint writing, but it can also be quite different here with this sort of hook at the bottom, or here, you know, it almost looks like an E to us if you just kind of glanced over it. The letter R is definitely one of the most challenging and the most common. These sort of squiggly ones here, here I haven't seen them as often, but this version here, which could almost look like a U, is common, or the sort of almost like a tiny sort of Z squiggle is very common as well. The letter S at the beginning or end of word depends. You can get this sort of these ones that slope down below the line, and then you can get the S's that just look like these here in the middle of the word. The T can look, again, it could look more familiar, but sometimes the T stroke is not quite there, so something to look out for. And the W in this form here, again, sometimes you might think this part at the end here is like an O, and this part here is a different letter. So again, it's something to look out for. And here, this version sort of looks more familiar. And the X can have a sloping part at the bottom, which, you know, might make it a bit look like a P or other letters as well. So it's I would kind of say that the main letters to kind of really try and remember is the E, because it's very, very different. It's the C and the R. Once you are able to concentrate on these and how different they are, I think that makes a big difference when you start reading a text. The capital letters are a bit more straightforward. Again, this is a wee doodle from the Hamilton of DL collection. The main letters, I think, that are quite different is the H. That my pen keeps disappearing. The H. What have I done? Sorry. I want my pen. There we go. Let's hope this works. Yes. So the H almost look like a double F. Oh, sorry. I'm getting confused myself. So the capital F looks like two small F's tied together. The H can be quite an open shape there. Just kind of trying to see the other ones. I kind of think it depends how ornate the writer was, and if that is at the beginning of a document. Sometimes if it's at the beginning, it could be a bit more ornate, which makes it more difficult to read. But overall, the capital letters, which you're probably not going to encounter as much as the smaller letters, are a bit easier to identify, apart from the H and the F, which even confused me there, thinking it was an H. That's yeah. So it looks like either like two Fs, two small Fs, or maybe the kind of H that, I don't know, the H I would have learned in school would have been like this, you know. So it looks quite confusing in that sense. So if you have a long text that you have to try and make sense of, there's a good sort of approach to how to prepare a transcript. So what you would need is you have to prepare a transcript sheet. So this should be laid out. So you look at your original document, you number the lines, and then you have your transcript sheet. You also number the lines and you double space. So you have because to kind of write little notes into there as well. And then you start by looking at the small words that you might be able to read, first of all. And then you start looking at the letters sometimes has to be letter by letter, and you leave space where you can't identify the letter. Then I would also recommend to have a magnifying lens. Obviously, if you're working online, you can zoom in, which is great, but depending on how the documents are made available to you, I think if you're on Scotland People, you usually get the sort of black and white style, which is not so useful for trying to work out how somebody shaped the letters. If you have the original ink view, then you can see better where the ink is a bit darker, where the person started writing the letter and where it's a bit lighter. You don't get this if you have this sort of black and white view, unfortunately. You should expect it to take a bit of time, so it's not a quick process. Just take it slowly, and as you go along, you will speed up. Try and identify the style of writing used. So look for these letters I showed you earlier on, you know, to give you a clue what handwriting style was used, and then you know what other kind of unusual letters you might have to expect as well. So as I said before, look for familiar or easy to read words, and same as letters that are familiar. So the and are always good words to look out first of all. Learn how to look for your special letters, then try and read each word letter by letter. Sometimes it helps trying to say the word out loud because people wrote phonetically, not kind of sticking to any Oxford English dictionary. They would have looked things up. Dictionaries didn't exist, so you would have written things the way you said them. Having a Scots dictionary to hand is useful as well. I put this in your handout as well. There's an online, Dictionary of the Scots language is an excellent resource, and it's free online as well. And I would say don't worry if you cannot read anything the first time, because sometimes the word occurs again in the same text, and it might be written clearer, or maybe the first time the writer used an abbreviation because they have to try and fit it into a line, and later on they have more space, so they actually write out the whole word. So sometimes the clues are actually in the text later on. Then a few pointers about spelling and grammar. As I said before, there was no agreed spelling for words. So you would spell the words the way they sounded, and abbreviations were frequently used. And they were sometimes indicated by an open loop above the word, which for some reason has sort of moved a bit to the side here in my slideshow. But it's sort of like this sort of little symbol that means what has been abbreviated, and really the extent of abbreviation is completely up to the writer. Sometimes only one letter is missing, sometimes half the word is missing. So again, this is where it helps to be able to look out for the same word later on in the same document. There were no rules on capitalization. So if a letter had a capital letter, if a word had a capital letter, that was just because the writer felt it should be highlighted. There was a lack of or inconsistent use of punctuation. I would say in general, any punctuation you might kind of see, just completely ignore it. It really add your own punctuation in later on when you've done your transcript to give it sense. Dots appear all over the place in old documents, and it doesn't sort of fit with how we would write today. Then we've got the matter of language. So you will often, a text will often include Scots and Latin words. And there's a few special letters that go with the Scots words. So there's the letter son, and that represented the sound of the letter of the letter th, but it looked like the letter Y. So you've probably seen this if you're, I don't know, if you visit York or some kind of place that kind of is sort of medieval. You will see the old tea shop, and sorry, get my pen again. So this letter here is not a y, it's a the. So it's the old tea shop there. And so you will see that letter being used in documents to represent the th. And then we've got the other letter, a York, and that used to denote the letter, the sound Y. And the closest representation that was kind of found in sort of letter setting was it's kind of just disappeared off to the side here, the letter that looked a bit like a Z, yeah, like this. You see this sort of in the other handwriting styles as well. Or if you ever looked at ever had a text in sort of Gothic writing that was popular in Germany, certainly in the past centuries. There sort of been like a Z there. So this letter was used in printing, and then it became used like the letter Z. So Lenzi, as we say today, it would actually be Lingy, and you've got in Mingus and so on as well in Scotland. Then we've got a few words you might come across quite often. So umquil is late or deceased. Quen is when, and you have that kind of, if you're a Scottish speaker, you slightly aspirate the wh, so that kind of is a bit of a stronger representation than the writing. So quen and quilk, which is which, and ilk is this or this, the very same or each. Sick is such, and there will be many other obsolete words. When we were transcribing some receipts from the Handwriting of the Year collection, sometimes you thought, okay, this word must be, I can only see a particular word in there, but I don't know what it means. And then you go to the dictionary of the Scottish language, and yeah, it's just a word that was used very often in the past in Scotland. So it is useful to have a bit of confidence in your transcription skills, and just look words up the way they look to you, and you will quite often find. Oh, I'm getting a cup of tea. Thank you. Hot. Thank you. Okay. So another element which might cause a bit of confusion are the numbers. So in most Scottish documents of the period 1500 to 1750, Roman numerals or words were used for numbers, and quite often you also have a mix of the two. We'll see this later. So it's only later that Arabic numerals were found more regularly. And if you have an I for a 1 on its own or at the end of a number, it will be rendered as a J. So we just have otherwise the usual Roman numerals. If you might have to, some people are more familiar with it, others might maybe need a bit of a memory jogger. So the X is 10, L is 50, C is 100, D is 500, M is 1000, and V, for some reason I missed that out, is 5. So obviously the I is the 1. So this is something to look out for as well, and the sort of mix of Roman numerals and written numbers. Then a bit about dates. This is where I always get confused myself. So I'm going to read this out to you. So so the first official New Year, which took place on that date in Scotland, was the 1st of January 1600. Before then, the year officially began on the 25th of March. So the 24th of March, 1490 was followed by the 25th of March, 1491. So that kind of might help you when you look at a set of records, for example. You think, oh, how come it suddenly jumped to the next year? There's no, it's as we think of it today, it will be the same year, but because New Year occurred in March, the year then jumps forward. So, and the rest of the British Isles did not adopt this New Year change until the 1st of January 1752, and by which time also 11 days had to be removed from the calendar and adjustment to accommodate the change from the Julian calendar to the Gregorian calendar. So there could be sort of a lot of kind of transposing the dates there. Do I have this book here? There's some excellent, I think I've got this in your handout as well. There's some excellent books about dating and regal years. There's all kinds of different ways of how documents were dated. It could be in the year, in the 6th year of the reign of King so and so. There's quite a lot of tools there that can help you getting the date right as we would translate it to ourselves there. And then you've got another sort of wonderful speciality in Scottish writing of dates, which is they're referred to as the Jai dates. And this is just something that developed over, I don't know, several decades, centuries, I don't know. But JAJ, when you see that in a document, it means 1000. And this came from a misinterpretation of handwriting through the centuries. So JAJ was supposed to be 1M for 1000, but it's just that maybe somebody wrote the M in a funny way. I have no idea, but it's just the way it's developed. I suppose somebody might have been able to rationally think this, why are we still doing this? But it's definitely used, and you'll see in the document we've got as an example later on as well. So it's very, very, very common. So you see this sort of like a mixed style there. JAJVC and 42 is 1542. So JAJ is the 1000, and then the 5C is the 500. So 1542. When I first heard about it, I thought, yeah, this is a bit strange. But then you don't have to look far to come across it in documents. So this takes us to the end. And this is a document that I've sent you a full image of this document there, where you can practice at home, and I've given you a transcript of how far I've been able to transcribe it. So you could try and do your transcript sheet, go letter by letter, work through text, and kind of then go back and forth to kind of see whether there's clues in the text later on for words you couldn't read earlier on. So this is quite a large document, and it's an indenture between Thomas Orr and James Ingalls the Younger of Muir House, and the latter is being apprenticed as a writer and procurator, and it dates from 1697, and it's from our Hamilton of DL collection. So when you see the whole document in the handout, this is just the first 4 lines, so it's like a whole A3 sheet. You will kind of think, oh, this might be a bit difficult, but once you start going through it and apply the technique, looking for the unusual letters and so on, you will see it will work. A magnifying lens is definitely useful. You can even get some that have a wee light in them, which I think are particularly great. So I would kind of say, if you were starting to read this here, just as a first glance, to give you a clue what hand, obviously we now know it's secretary hand, but if you didn't know what handwriting style the document had been presented, the document that was presented to you was written in, you would then kind of start looking at the sort of distinct letter shapes. I'm going to get my pen again. So the E, that's the wrong way around from our E. Let's see, the C, that looks like an R. I think this one, here. The R, that looks like a sort of Harry Potter scar. So that kind of tells you this is secretary hand, so you have to be careful with these particular letters. And again, here, as I said, the first letter can always be really ornate, so with lots of embellishment. So you can sometimes just, when you start reading it, you can think, oh yeah, that must be that particular word. So I've given you the transcript down here. So it's at Glasgow, the 22 day of October. And then here we've got this J date. So this is 1697. So you have J, this is the 1000. This is here the 6. Oh, I've written over my C. So this is the 6. This is the 100 for the C. And then this is the ampersand and then we've got 97 there. So this the 22nd day of October, 1697. Sorry, I've got my screen here over this. There we go. Oh, sorry, there we go. Sorry, I've moved myself back up again. Anyway, the years, this is an abbreviation. Sorry, I can't see my text here. There we go. Sorry, I can see all of your wee pictures, but I can't move it for some reason. Here we go. Now it's not able to move. So this is the quilk we talked about earlier on. The same day in presence. So here you've got the strange R again and the strange C again. Of Robert Robertson, writer in Glasgow. And this is depute. So this is sort of shows you that there's an abbreviation. So it should be deputy, or probably then it would have been written with IE, to Sir William Fleming. And here we've got the capital F. Of Ferm, it's again double, the capital F. Knight and coronet, you've got the R again, and Archibald Fleming. This looks to me like fear thereof, and then commissioners of Glasgow, then compared, which is appeared. Personally, Mr. John Bryce, and again, you've got the writer in Glasgow, and this is kind of another one of the abbreviated words. So I wasn't too sure what this abbreviated. So you can see it's PRBR properly, but later on in the text it actually spells out procurator, and then especially constituted for Thomas Orr. So you can see, I hope you can kind of see that when you sort of read it together with me here, that it actually is fairly, well, I hope you can follow it along, and you can kind of see how the writer is fairly consistent. One thing you notice is that the R at the end of a letter sort of always sits a bit sort of more to the, it leans more to the left than if it's in the middle of a letter, of a word. So so you can have a go. So in your handouts, you've got the full text as the image, and you've got the transcript as far as I was able to work it out. And you have a sheet of the capital letters, the small letters, and then you have some additional resources. So I've listed some here. So there's a website called scottishhandwriting.com, and that gives you little exercises and also alphabets and pointers how to, I think they do like a day, I don't know if it's daily, but on a regular basis, they kind of have a wee sort of quiz you can try and work out. Then there's a dictionary of the Scots language, which is excellent. Then we've got sort of a list of on Scotland's places. There's a sheet of Scottish letter forms, which is quite good. And then I would highly recommend, this is a free course on Future Learn. and it's called Early Modern Scottish Paleography, Reading Scotland's Records, and it's from Glasgow University. And you learn a bit about Kirk session records and more about how to read old handwriting, abbreviations, all the rest of it. So it's a dual sort of, you get a lot of information about the Kirk session records, how they were created, what information you will find in them, and you'll get to learn more about how to read old handwriting. Then there's some useful books. There's a book called Scottish Handwriting 1150 to 1650, so that takes you even further back. Then there's Scottish Handwriting, a self-help pack. So that was published by the Scottish Records Association and National Archives of Scotland, as was now National Records of Scotland. So I think that's still available from the National Records of Scotland, or you will find it in a local library. You can also consider English handwriting, 1400 to 1650, which is useful. And then there's a nice little book, which is a bit more fun. That's this one here, if I hold it up. I don't know whether you can see it the right way around. But it's called a Secretary Hand ABC book. So it's a bit like a book for children when they first learn to read. So you have pictures and then of words that have certain letters in them, which is quite fun. And then there's other tools that might be useful for you. So there's a glossary of Scottish legal terms, which is very useful. A formulary of Old Scots legal documents. Again, that kind of tells you how documents are structured. Then there's medieval word lists. There's Latin for local history and Latin for local and family history, family historians. So that kind of helps you reading any entries that would have been written in Latin. I have to say I haven't been able to get far back in my husband's family history here, but I used to work as a family history researcher in a diocesan archive in Germany, and all the entries were in Latin. So you need a bit of Latin to make sense of documents that are from certainly, well, in Germany, certainly Catholic Church records were in Latin until fairly recently, and that might be the same here. And this is the book I was talking about, Handbook of Dates for Students of British History. That's really useful if you have problems dating documents. And that's the end of my talk. I hope you found this useful. It's as I said before, the main aim would be to make you feel confident to approach a text and try and use the tools I've given you to transcribe the example that Claire will email to you. You can next time I see any one of you, you can let me know how you go on. So thank you very much. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer anything now, or you can email me. My email address is there.
I'll just copy that email down into the chat box, just in case anyone. Oh.
Shall I unshare? Yeah.
Yeah, if you unshare, I'll just put it in the chat box. Does anyone have any questions? You can put them into the chat box, or if you want to unmute yourself and put your camera on, you can talk as well. Still a bit of time, then maybe you're actually all downloading. There's 6 handouts in the chat box, so you can actually go and download all of those as well.
I've got another book I forgot to mention, just in case any of you has German ancestry. There's obviously, is this actually mirror for you, or is this the right way around for you?
Yeah, that's the right way around.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so this is the German handwriting that was quite popular the first half of the 20th century. So that's quite a challenge as well. You have to approach this as if you were trying to read secretary hand.
Do you know, that's quite interesting you saying that, because my husband's has a lot of his line are Dutch.
Mm-hmm.
So I just realised to look at my camera on. A lot of his family are Dutch, and that's what I've been doing. I've been going through. I've actually taken them further back than I have my Scottish family,
Mm-hmm.
and it's been really, really interesting. And the records, you know, they're free to search. such, you know, an amazing resource.
Mhm.
But then that's, do you know, I was sitting, I've got all these documents and I'm piecing it together, and I thought, wait a minute, because all the Christian names are going to be written down in Latin. Is how do I record? What is the Dutch form? What is the
Yes.
Dutch form of some of those names? Because
Mhm.
it's not going to be the same as what the English ones would be.
Mhm. Mhm. Yes.
So I need to try and see if I can find a list somewhere of how they should be recorded, and then perhaps when I record the baptism, put a note in saying they were recorded as, you know, their baptismal name was
Yes.
whatever.
Yes. No, that's right. Yes. Obviously, if you're in your native tongue, you kind of know what it would be, but if it's not your native tongue, then
I
it's
know.
more challenging. Yes.
Mm.
Yes.
And I mean, I think as well, it's you know, so easy to kind of, you know, the Latin and the British names, but the Dutch names, yeah, not as familiar. So
Mhm.
I'll
Mhm.
need to go through that and see if I can find a list somewhere. I know there's a site called Dutch Genealogy, which has got a Facebook group, so I might actually ask them and see if there is a list somewhere. I don't know, what's German like to, I mean, do they have an easy resource? Is it free to search, or what's
I have to admit that I'm kind of catching up with that. Certainly, in general, I always kind of felt Germany was a bit behind
mm,
Britain, you know, when it came to digitizing. But I think they're doing quite a bit. But I haven't actually looked into it at all because my family history is sort of well, some people have already done it, and others is not actually in Germany either. So I haven't looked, but in general, I would say you wouldn't have a centralized records as here because Germany didn't exist until 1870.
mm,
So it's more likely that you have to go to regional, or you have to rely on kind of joint projects where lots of regional archives come together. You know, you don't have anything like the
like Scotland's people, or
Scotland's people, or
yeah,
even just bringing together all the registers. Yeah, I don't know. It would
mm,
be, and then one thing that's quite well known for German family history is it's difficult to get. I think in England people have the expectation to be able to go very far. I think in Scotland you don't have the same expectation to be able to go as far as you would be in England because
mm,
the history of Scotland wasn't quite as stable as in England.
yeah.
In Germany, you had the 30 Years' War in the 17th century, and it's very, very unlikely you'll get records that are older because there was such.
That's it, and I mean, even the First and Second World War as well. I mean, you must think that potentially a lot of records were destroyed, perhaps then as well.
Yeah, I don't think it's as was as bad as the 30 Years' War.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
maybe they were more protected by that time. You know, people were more um, were aware that they needed special protection. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, it's the same as when you look at obviously we've gone off on a totally different subject really here, but you know, a lot of the service records from World War I, you know, were destroyed during World War II. So
Mhm,
yeah, sometimes there's gaps.
mhm.
Don't have any questions. Does anyone have anything they would like to ask? Everyone's staying quiet.
I would certainly recommend if you want to explore uh, reading old handwriting further. I would definitely recommend that Future Learn course because it's
Mm,
certainly free when I did it. I presume it's still free.
mm,
It gives you a bit more of more to practice with. In general, I would kind of say the more often you try it, the better. I mean, I quite like giving this talk because that keeps it fresh in my mind as well, because I
yeah.
don't have to read secretary hand
Mm.
every day either, you know. So
No, I mean, I'm the same in my job. I don't either. I mean, I think when I studied at uni, they gave us 10 wills and we had to decipher those 10 wills.
yeah,
And the one thing that they taught us at uni was if you're transcribing a document, change to a new line whenever the document
yes,
changes to a new line,
yes,
because
yeah,
when you go back over it, it makes it a lot easier to actually see, you know, your lines the way that they run in the actual
yes.
document as well. But I think it's one of those things that practice. You know, go to Scotland's People and get yourself so many different wills from different time periods, and yeah, just go through them, have them by hand. Yep, I've got the trusty magnifying glass here, always at my side.
Or find something you think could be a bit more exciting, you know, like the Kirk session records. Because when I first was introduced to secretary hand, I was in Germany, and we had to transcribe a witch trial. And that's exactly the same writing style. Of course, you want to know why.
Well, that's it. I mean, we had to do wills, but I mean, I think if they'd actually given us like a few wills and some Kirk session records and some, it probably would have been a bit more interesting, actually. But yeah, get yourself a variety of documents and just go through them all, and try and, you know, do it regular, because I think if you've not done it for a while, it kind of takes you a bit of time to get back into it. But then, as you say, the format of some of them are, particularly wills, you know, the way that it's worded, particularly at the beginning, is pretty much the same with all wills, and once you know what it says, it becomes fairly easy. Because I know that certainly with family, I've picked up old documents and said, you know, and shown people it, and then read bits of it, and they're like, "What? I can't even see that."
Yes.
So yeah, it can be.
I think, as I said before, I find if you look at your entries from the statutory registers on Scotland's People, because it's the black and white rendition, sometimes that can make it. I presume they must have decided this was better than. Maybe it's quicker to download than having the full color. There must be a reason for it. But if you have tricky handwriting, it's easier if you get the full color image, I would say, because that gives you more clue. But there's a certain. I was going to find with more recent documents. The main, the main thing that always causes confusion is actually a number. It's the 7. It's very sort of. It almost looks like a 9 or a 4, and people also have to kind of just double check, you know, that they've got the right number. When they copy information, it's not the 9, so it's actually the 7s. Yeah. So
So yeah, we hope that you have lots of fun and get into some transcribing over the weekend. Thank you so much for your talk this evening, Wiebke. It's been really interesting.
Thank you.
Just a couple of, let me see, what have we got on the announcements? Right, the date for the next webinar will be Thursday the 10th of November at 7 p.m. I'm just going to put some details so that you can register into the chat box for that. Unfortunately, the speaker for November has had to call off due to unforeseen circumstances. So as it's near Remembrance Sunday, I'll step in and do a talk on researching World War II Air Force ancestors. It's a bit of a long one. I'll give you a bit of warning just now. It's about 1 hour and 15 minutes, but it does cover men from throughout the Commonwealth who served during World War II. And during the presentation, we'll also look at documents that tell the story of a crew who were shot down over France in 1944. So it's not just looking at old documents, it's telling the story along the way. Remember that if you're not already a member of Lanarkshire Family History Society, then why not join now? Annual membership ranges from £10 to £16, and you will receive 3 journals per year, monthly e-news, and use of the Society's Research Centre in Motherwell. And you can find out more via the website. I'll put the details just now into the chat box. So many documents open, it's unbelievable. There we go. So the handouts are still in the chat. I'll give you another minute just to download them if you haven't already. We will have them sent out along with the next e-news, or if you've got any problems, you can contact me via my Treehouse Genealogy page as well, and I'll get them sent off to you. And thank you again, Wiebke, for your talk. It's been really nice seeing you again, and hope to catch up soon.
Yeah.
Okay, have a good weekend, everyone. Take care.